Hey there! I thought that today we would do a paper review. I did a live hangout a short while ago and some people asked me if I could review Cosmo Airlight paper, and I said I'll see what I can do. And then after I ended that hangout, I was messaged by my Calgarian friend Stephenomenon, and the Stephenomenon said, "You want some of that paper?" I said, "Sure." He said, "I'll put some in the mail." I have it in the mail. So a very kind thank you to Stephenomenon, who has basically brought you this review. So Cosmo Airlight is a Japanese paper. Stephen kindly sent me a couple of sheets. This is, of course, now that people's stashes of Tomoe River are dwindling, it's very popular. This is an interesting paper. Cosmo describes it as micro-coated book paper used for magazines and catalogs. Supposedly reproduces colors and pictures very well, and I think people again are just looking for a Tomoe River alternative. Now this is 75 grams per square meter and it is A4 sized. Here you have a letter notepad. And this would be A4. So as you can see, it is a little longer and it is ever so slightly narrower. A4 rather than letter. A4 from the top of my head is 297 by 210 millimeters, but correct me if I'm wrong, I forgot to check that. What is the price? Well, that depends a little bit on where you get it. I was looking at Wonder Pens, who are selling 50 sheets for $24.75. That is Canadian, not US dollars. Okay, so I thought we would see how this paper performs. And to make things not overexposed, I used a black background today, thinking that might be fun. Alright, without further ado, let's write. Here we have a pen with a medium nib, but I actually think it writes like a fine. So this would be a classic or Lambrou pens LB6. The ink is Mont Blanc Corn Poppy Red. It's not an ink review. I'm going to label that F for fine, even though, as I said, it is a medium nib, but it writes really quite finely. Okay, I am then moving on to, this is the Cross Boba Fett, and the nib is a medium and the pen does sing. I think at this point I'm going to zoom in a little bit. The ink is Mont Blanc Irish Green. I thought we would move on to a broad nib. So here we have a Magna Carta, the Elements, which I'm just going to call Elements if you don't mind. This is a broad nib. The ink is the only ink you really need is B.R.E. Brown. And because this is not necessarily the broadest broad, I thought I would also throw in this Leonardo as a bonus. We have here a Leonardo Furore Grande. The ink is Leonardo Blue, which I do think is a very nice blue. Why am I My Zs are being increasingly peculiar. I don't know what's going on. This is another broad. Then I have a double broad. This is a conid. King size bulk filler. And the ink is Lamy Mango, which I was a little worried might not show up clearly on the video, but it seems to be pretty legible. So that's awesome. And the reason I put it in this pen is that I thought a transparent ink would look cool in a demonstrator, and I do think that it does. Alright, then we have, I thought we would do this. Here is a Modern Fuel bolt action. They're very expensive ballpoint type pens. This happens to have a Pilot G2 refill in it, so it's more like a gel pen at this point. But I do find them very comfortable. Alright, I think this gives us a pretty good overview of what was going on in the writing. On my end, I'm looking around. I'll zoom in for you. I don't really see any feathering. I'll do this a little slow so as to not make you nauseous. But I'm not seeing any feathering really with any of these inks or nibs. So that's great. Now the other thing we want to see is what about bleed through and ghosting or show through. It's really not bad. I don't see any bleed through. You see there is something going on here, but it's not really bleed through. It's just a very wet writing nib. That's the double broad. I don't see any bleed through though. And I hardly see any show through either. Right? I mean, if I hold it up against the light, you may be able to see some, but I mean, I would be very able to write on this without having any issues with writing on both sides, messing with writing on the other side. So overall, I think you could do a lot worse than purchase this paper. If you're looking for a loose leaf solution now that your beloved Tomoe River has ceased to be, I think this is actually really quite nice. So, once again, a very kind thank you to Stephenomenon. I appreciate it. Everybody should thank Stephenomenon. I'm getting ahead of myself in my speech. Co-articulation, we call that. Thank Stephenomenon. I think we should all thank Stephenomenon. So, thank you, Stephenomenon. I appreciate it.